Hello, and welcome to MULTIVID, the show where I take all my failed video ideas and talk about what they are, why they didn't work, and why I've abandoned them. Now, my channel is quite young and I haven't put out very many videos, but that doesn't mean I am without failed ideas. There are plenty of video ideas sitting in my notes that likely will never come to fruition. This can be due to any number of factors including context, personal experience, and struggles with writing. Today, I have chosen 6 failed ideas, and I will be explaining my reasoning for abandoning each of them. I hope to give an insight into how I choose what videos to make and how I arrive to that decision. So, let's get right to the first failed idea.
He shouldn't die. Yes, fuck you.
Blood of Zeus is an adult animated show on Netflix made by the same animation studio that made Castlevania. The story revolves around a boy named Heron who is the illegitimate child of Zeus. Being a massive Percy Jackson fan and a fan of the Castlevania show, I decided to give it a watch. Which was a mistake. The story of the show is utter garbage. It is the most bland, uninspired, and creatively bankrupt thing I've ever watched. The thing is, there are interesting ideas in this show, but towards the end, it just congeals together into a mess of slop. The thing that fucks me off the most is how the show is all about how Zeus is an asshole and his failures as a husband and leader have doomed the whole world and nothing is ever done about it. Hell, he literally fucking dies at the end of season 1, but then season 3 ends with him back on Olympus as king of the gods once again. It does the fucking Harry Potter thing. It brings up all these questions about gods and the status quo and then does absolutely nothing to fix any of it. The protagonist Heron is also a blank slate. He isn't interesting, he isn't cool, he's a generic fantasy protagonist. The bottom line is that Blood of Zeus is bland, uninspired, and seems afraid of trying to keep your attention. It's been a long-standing rumor that Netflix writes their shows now so that people can watch them while on their phones, and this show feels emblematic of that. While watching this show, I tried to pay attention. I wanted to be invested in this show, but I would constantly feel the need to pull my phone out and play solitaire. Yes, that could be because I have ADHD and cell phones are also ubiquitous in our lives to the point where many people can't function without them. I would counter by saying that if a show is good enough, if it keeps me invested, I feel no desire to pull my phone out at all. I didn't pull my phone out during Rooster, or Andor, or Invincible, or even fucking Castlevania. Blood of Zeus was so poorly paced and written that it was a genuine slog to sit through. The worst offender was an overly long flashback in episode 3 of season 2 where Hades details his meeting with Persephone in excruciating detail in a sequence that takes far longer than it should have. So, why am I abandoning this idea? Because it's slop. Blood of Zeus is C-tier Netflix slop. There is definitely a market for tearing apart bad TV shows and movies. I'm certainly no stranger to that part of YouTube, but Blood of Zeus isn't particularly noteworthy, and I don't personally believe the topic to be something that would have drawn views, because at the end of the day, that's one of the core pillars myself and other creators need to be concerned with. Views and interest are still things we need to worry about because that's what pays the bills. The other problem is making that video would mean I'd have to go back and rewatch the show, and every time I think about having to sit through it again, my stomach curls a little. So for now, I'm leaving it at the fact that the show is bland and boring, and moving on to the next idea down the list.
Twinkle, twinkle, asshole.
For the past 10 years, I have been an avid player of Destiny and Destiny 2. My first time playing D1 was on the Xbox 360 in 2016, before moving to Destiny 2 on a PC that could barely handle it, moving back to Xbox, and then back to PC. I've seen every high and low point the game and community has had to offer. The Moon's Haunted jokes, vault cleaning, sunsetting, divinity drama, I've seen it all. And every time when the game is at its lowest, I still hop on and play for a little bit. Maybe I only do one strike and leave, maybe I'll play the seasonal activity a few times, or even just sit in the tower and enjoy the ambiance. Something keeps me logging into this game, and I wanted to interrogate why that is. The problem is, well, I have no idea. I don't know what keeps me coming back. I could point to the lore, the gunplay, the abilities, sunk cost fallacy, But in any case, it's difficult for me to establish the reasons for my obsession with this game and why I am so frustrated with the fact that I don't enjoy it anymore. Maybe I've lost faith in Bungie. Maybe I'm sick of playing the same game for 10 years. Maybe it's because I don't have any friends left who play the game. I cannot enjoy this game the way that I used to, and that fills me with a deep sadness. The reasons why I won't make this into a video are twofold. The first is because of the troubles I just mentioned about failing to articulate the exact shape of my frustration with this game. I've tried to write about this before, and I always come up blank. I've been playing this game since I was 14. It's become deeply ingrained in me as a person, and as a result, I struggle to fully examine it without examining myself in the process. And in the absence of any solid critiques or rationale on the game and its current state, I run the risk of becoming a reactionary grifter. Those of you in the community know exactly what I'm talking about. With the community being in as poor of a state as it is, longtime Destiny creators have turned towards creating the same repetitive content about the game being dead and Bungie being staffed by morons. The biggest Destiny creator on the platform has all but abandoned the game in favor of growing his deadlock and variety channels. The thing is, Dado was able to move on to other games that way simply because he was the biggest. He had a much larger cushion underneath him to experiment and pursue other ventures. Creators smaller than him either tried and failed to pivot to other games or simply can't afford to take that risk. Destiny may not be paying Bungie's bills right now, but it's definitely paying theirs. So the only play they have left is to pivot to making these kinds of reactionary slop level videos. Hell, even Mr. Lore Daddy himself isn't above making content of that caliber. So if the space is being flooded with these kinds of videos, then what hope do I have to stand out against the rest? Even if my video is more of a personal retrospective, examining my own relationship with Destiny and how it's evolved, on the surface, it will still appear the same as any of those other videos. And on a more general note, I am not comfortable with contributing to that cycle of reactionary grift content only produced to pay the bills. So, instead of simply feeding the rage machine, I will leave my personal retrospective unsaid and move on to the next idea.
He's so cool! I'm gonna name him Chuck.
Isn't it standing in the minefield?
No!
Oh my god, okay, we get it!
This one is kind of a double feature. Strap in. During my video on Red vs. Blue Restoration, I mentioned talking shop with fellow creator Boomerang about Machinima and his Crash series. In that video, I had a throwaway joke line about making a whole video just on Crash. How do you do it, dude? How the fuck do you do it? After I released my first video on this channel, Boomerang reached out to me. We had a short conversation over Discord where we talked shop. During that exchange, he told me he does all of the Machinima in Crash by himself. Do you have any idea how complicated Crash is? I could probably make a whole video just analyzing Crash. Boom, my guy, how do you do it? Tell me your fucking secrets. The thing is, Crash is evolving at an incredibly rapid rate and at such a rate that I wouldn't feel comfortable making a definitive analysis video of the show at this point in time. By Boom's own admission, the show hasn't even finished season 1 yet, and even with just the past few episodes, we've seen advancements from the team in Halo 3 modding, prominent voice actors like Dave Fennoy, and full-scale animations and fight scenes made by some of the same people who worked on Red vs. Blue. Crash is still a very raw product that is evolving rapidly, and I would want to wait until it's more fleshed out before making any sort of video on it. A logical extension of that would be, what if I made a video about every Halo Machinima show currently in active production and put them on a tier list? However, that hits a huge problem at conception, which is that Halo, and by extension Halo Machinima, simply isn't as prominent as it used to be. The days of Red vs. Blue and other Machinima shows being as popular as they were kinda died with Rooster Teeth, and a lot of the channels that are left making Machinima just aren't that good. At some point, me making that tier list video would stop being an informative exercise about the state of machinima and would instead turn into, hey everybody, everything that isn't these 4 or 5 channels can go fuck themselves. And I am not comfortable with making content like that, especially because a lot of the channels in question have subscriber counts in the triple or even double digits, and while I'm certainly not a powerhouse of a channel, going after channels that small stops being educational and starts being bullying. I've deliberately avoided naming names or showing examples on screen here for that reason. The other part of it is, I am terrified of being pigeonholed by the algorithm. I use machinima as a unique method of presentation for my videos, but I don't cover primarily machinima content. My channel is still very young, and I'm scared that if I start making more machinima videos, that the YouTube algorithm will pigeonhole me and I'll be locked into making machinima content forever. That's not a deal I'm willing to make at this point in time. I want to keep my options flexible. I don't want to just cover a single topic. My current hustle is of course the absolute comics, but I have plans for what to do after that. Anyways, those are the reasons why this idea has been abandoned, or at least why the crash video is tabled for a much later date. Let's move on.
How do you like that, Obama? I pissed on the moon, you idiot!
About a year ago, I started getting recommended a bunch of vocal stim compilations on YouTube. For those of you unfamiliar, vocal stimming is something common in people with ADHD or autism where they can repeat certain noises or words such as humming, singing, or random quotes. These vocal stim compilations are compilations of various viral internet clips that the poster sometimes repeats as part of a vocal stim. When you break it down to its core components, a vocal stim is no different from a Vine comp. Most vocal stim clips are even of similar length to Vines sometimes. It's a fast-moving compilation of popular internet clips and memes that through their repetition and notoriety can enter a person's daily vernacular. That sounds fine on its own, but it's not really a super intelligent conclusion to draw. No shit, they're like Vine comps. What else is new? I wanted to add an extra layer to my comparison by taking things back even further. I wanted to go the route of saying vocal stims and Vine comps are like mixtapes, a cassette tape made of various songs compiled by one person according to their personal preference. The problem with my comparison is that mixtapes are well before my time. I was born in 2003. I've never used a cassette tape before. As a result, any comparison I would have made in a potential video would have been surface level at best. The other problem with this is a problem that reaches into the deeper structure and conception of this idea. Around the same time I was getting these compilations recommended to me, I saw a video by a channel called Lowercase Jai about the infamous YTP Fesh Pence of Blair. The video is very good, and I've linked it in the description for you guys to watch. In his closing arguments, Jay likens the concept of YouTube poops as a whole to graffiti. It was a genuinely mind-blowing comparison that sounds insane on the surface, but once you listen to his reasoning, it makes a lot of sense. When concepting out this video idea, I realized I was just copying the format of that video. Take a modern staple of internet culture and liken it to something much older in a big sort of aha moment. I wasn't making my own video, I was trying to make Jai's video. It likely would have turned out worse too, because like I said, any comparisons to mixtapes I would have made would have likely been surface level. Stim compilations to mixtapes also isn't as big of a leap in comparison as YouTube poops to graffiti. It's for those reasons that I shelved the idea in its entirety and decided to move on.
Well, combined, we make one person from Minneapolis. He's white and I'm over 300 pounds.
Excellent. Yeah, that's right. Fuck you, Minneapolis.
After I released my video on crowd control, a comment somewhere asked me to make a video about Gastronauts, which is another game show that freshly debuted on Dropout around the same time as crowd control did. I haven't watched it, and I have no desire to watch it either, but to the best of my knowledge, it is a cooking show of some kind. While considering the idea, my mind drifted to another cooking show made by another internet company. Before Rooster Teeth dissolved, their podcast Face Jam made a cooking show called Trucked Up. Trucked Up's central premise was a cooking show where two teams cook inside of food trucks trying to recreate popular fast food dishes. Things like Panda Express orange chicken and Wendy's pretzel bacon pub burgers were dishes on some of the episodes. Trucked Up is decent. It has some really funny bits, the drama and storytelling is pretty good. All in all, it's a decent cooking show. Except I have no frame of reference. Trucked Up is the only reality cooking show I've ever watched. I have no frame of reference for what makes a good cooking show or not, aside from one Lady Emily video about kitchen nightmares. If I were to watch Gastronauts, I would be comparing it against a single show and nothing else. There's also just the more general fact that I'm just not interested in Gastronauts. I was interested in crowd control, and I knew enough about how comedy works, so I felt confident in talking about that, but I do not feel the same way towards Gastronauts. This is something I have to think about whenever I get a viewer suggestion. My own personal motivation has to play into these videos, because if it doesn't, then the video will just turn out bad. The context under which I examine something also needs to be strong, or it runs the risk of just being weak. Speaking of which,
Your Majesty, there's a second bus coming!
the impetus for this one originated from a paper I wrote in college. The class was about the ways 9/11 impacted American cinema, and one of the movies we looked at was Django Unchained. At that point in time, I had recently watched Kill Bill for the first time, and the angle I took with my paper was how Tarantino's villains had changed after 9/11. I took the stance that Bill was a much more empathetic villain. He gives the impression that he hates what he's doing, he's presented as being a decent father, and Uma Thurman cries after she kills him. John Candy, on the other hand, is a straight-up asshole. We aren't supposed to feel bad for Candy in any way. You also look at Inglourious Basterds, and the big bad of that film is a literal Nazi. If there is a character who you're not supposed to feel bad about killing, they are either a Nazi or a zombie. 9/11 changed the way American action films look at villains, and it can be observed through Tarantino's work. I had an idea to expand on that thesis by making a video about the evolution of Tarantino's villains throughout his body of work. I thought it would be a good exercise to see how villains in our movies have changed throughout history. Not necessarily through the lens of 9/11, but it would have been a consideration. The problem is, once I started formulating a plan for the video, it started to feel... I don't really like the word tacky, but I'm not sure how else to describe it. It didn't feel like the kind of content I should be making. It felt more like a tier list or top 10 video. That's not what I do. Of course, I could make a more comprehensive video about how 9/11 changed all of American cinema instead of just focusing on Tarantino, but... I don't really want to do that. I spent a whole semester on the topic already. Don't get me wrong, I loved that class. It was one of my favorites, but I'm kind of done with 9/11. The bottom line is, it doesn't feel like something I would make or that I would enjoy making. The topic itself, on both a micro and macro scale, is also something I've already explored on my own in college. It's for those reasons that I've decided to abandon this idea. So, that's all the stuff I'm not making, which begs the question, what am I making? I am continuing my coverage of the Absolute Universe, with Superman coming up next, followed by Green Lantern, and then Martian Manhunter. I'm going to get ahead of any requests for Green Arrow and Catwoman by saying that those runs are supposed to be mini-series that will only last for a few issues. If I do make any videos on those runs, it will be after they have concluded so I can cover them in their totality. That's also one of the reasons why Manhunter is coming last. As far as videos on runs beyond Absolute, I currently don't have plans for that because they simply don't interest me. People keep sending me recommendations on what to read, and while I have been reading them and I appreciate people giving me those recommendations, there's already a million other videos about things like Snyder's Batman New 52 run. I'm comfortable with just being the Absolute guy. Once Manhunter is wrapped, I have plenty of ideas for where to go next. There's a few franchise movies in particular like Kingsman and John Wick that I really want to talk about because I find the way they spiraled out of control to be fascinating. There's also a more serious political analysis video I have in the works about the explosion of so-called games of skill in my home state of Pennsylvania. I will also confirm that I am indeed working on another episode of Outpost Nowhere and the script is finished. I plan to submit it to the Short Film Festival at HaloFest this December, and I'm waiting for submission guidelines to be released before I start working on it properly. Oh yeah, I'll be at HaloFest this year, so see you in a few months. And yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys took something away from this video, and if you did, go ahead and leave a like and a comment and tell me some of your thoughts on these ideas. I love reading my comments section after I upload a video, and your guys' support means the world to me. This was just a fun side video for my birthday to give me a small break before really hunkering down on the next 3 videos. Thank you all for watching, and thank you to David Wallace, Nara Arcadia, and Thicklest Mage for being members at the top tier of my Patreon. If you would like to support me and all the good ideas I have for videos, then please consider becoming a patron. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day.